Last weekend was a remarkable weekend. I mean, a number of you, didn't attend, and I'm almost sorry you didn't attend, although we had pretty full house. But it was a weekend of very deep inner growth, commitment to a spiritual life, to change, to truly make an effort to go to a much higher and deeper place inside oneself, where one truly can begin to disconnect from all the Maya in the world and, transform their attention. It was just an amazing weekend. I mean, I'm still recovering from it, frankly. There's a lot of work, very deep inner work, and the kind of work that I truly was born here to do. And as I say, I'm sorry those of you that missed it did miss it. I think you missed something special. But, life has its karma and ways of us functioning and economic things, et cetera, et cetera. But there will be another one in April. There's already 13 people that have signed up. I think there's room for 7 more. And if you're interested in coming, let me know, let Jennifer know. We'll be happy to put your name on the list and hold a place for you. Does anyone have a question? It did tell me one thing. I need to get a bigger place. It was very apparent last weekend that time is coming. I have to get a place that's bigger and can accommodate more people, and or at least people aren't packed in there like sardines. Does anyone have a question you'd like to ask?
Stuart, I have a question.
Yes, Manchi.
In a previous class, you had talked about detaching from outcome. Could you talk a little bit more about it?
Outcome, uh, positive, negative, whatever it is, it's a reward for the way we function and how we invest energy in situations. And what happens too often is people get these rewards. They get a better job, they get married, they get, a car or this, and they begin to take the reward for granted. And the reward becomes kind of sterile. It becomes, just something we take for granted and we live with every day, and we just assume, that it's supposed to be that way. Um, and how I do it, how I how I do it, I get lots of rewards in my life. And Angela, you're an hour late. It's at 1 o'clock, which is about 7 o'clock your time. I think there's a 6 hour difference.
Oh yeah, sorry. Pat told me it was at 8 p.m. my time, and I just
Okay.
didn't. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. It happens. But we can't discuss it now because people are meditating.
Okay,
Uh,
goodbye.
um, uh, where was I? How I deal with that, Manchi, is it's just another step on the ladder of my life. I have to absorb it. I have to get used to being and living with that reward, that newness of a new cycle of energy. And then I have to prepare myself to not allow it to get sterile. And the way I prepare myself to not allow it to get sterile is I have to open to another step on the ladder, to a higher level, to something else. And that keeps it creative. It keeps it from becoming, like you know, I don't know what, a lake with, a pond, where no water flows in and no water flows out, and it just becomes, sterile. And we as people have a tendency to do that. And I've learned a long time ago that whatever rewards I get, and there are many that come to me, people make donations, they do this, they do a lot of things that really help me out in my life. I cannot ever take it for granted. And I can never assume that it is the end of my internal growth, that, that it is only something which gives me footing on a different level so that I can continue the work inside myself to get closer to a state of spiritual enlightenment. Whatever the reward is, whatever it is, it's wonderful when it comes, but one should never take it for granted. Never assume that that is the end goal of living, because it's not. It gets stale. Almost everything in life gets stale if we take it for granted. And then, it means, okay, we've attained something and something has come to us as very good, but we have to learn how to keep it juicy, how to keep it vital and alive and full of energy and enable us to function with that vitality and that life and that kind of energy. So that's how I work with those kinds of things. And I find that for me, it really is terrific because I never take any person, any gift that's given to me, it's never taken for granted. And it's something that truly I treasure because it's alive, it's real, it's not a pond, you know, that attracts insects and mosquitoes and all kinds of vermin. And, it really has a living energy because one invests that energy into it. And we never take these wonderful things even the negative things that happen to us for granted. How do we use them to continue the growth in ourselves? How do we use the love of another person to continue the growth inside ourselves? How do we use, the two wonderful children you have as an opportunity? I mean, you know, to learn how to live unconditionally, basically. You have to learn how to live unconditionally as soon as you have a child. And it's all of that type of thing. We never know what's going to happen in 10 minutes. And we can't take anything that happens to us for granted. Can't be angry at it, even upset at it. We have to truly use it to learn how to build our inner lives. And then all of these things become amazing teachers. All of these experiences become amazing teachers of what we as human beings have to do to never take ourselves for granted or anything that's given to us in life for granted. And it certainly keeps one growing inside. It certainly keeps the heart open. It allows one to truly experience life, in a new and in a different way all the time. It's not easy to do because we're all creatures of habit and we're so used to taking things for granted that we have to change inside ourselves. We really have to make the effort to change inside, to break down that part of us that just assumes that life is going to be this way forever. And it never is. It's never this way in 10 minutes, in 2 days. It's always changing and different and provides us with a newness and a new kind of gift and something else that we need to learn to continue the growth inside ourselves. And have gratitude for these things. And never assume or take them for granted. Never take any other human being for granted. Any gift that we're given for granted. And the one thing that it does that's really important, it keeps us changing and growing. We can't take ourselves for granted. We don't level off on some playing field that we think is going to exist forever, because it never does. It's always changing. And we're always changing. And all the people in our lives are always changing. So that's how I deal with outcome, with gifts, with things that happen, with events that take place in my life. And it's constant. I'm barraged with them, and I can't be attached to any of them. At the same time, I have to be able to treasure each and every one of them that's given. And never assume that other people are supposed to function in any other way than they really do. you know? And the only way they change is they have to change inside themselves. Then people change, they function differently, they see the world differently. And up until that point, we have to have a lot of patience. And even after that point, we have to have a lot of patience. Does anyone else have a question?
Thank you, baby.
You have a question?
I have a question. Along the same lines of the last question, in relationships, how do we know when to stay and to absorb and grow from the relationship and when to cut it loose? I used to be like a clam where I thought, I won't accept defeat. I want to learn everything I can from this.
Yeah, I know. I went through the same thing. As long as a relationship, good or bad, indifferent or ugly, is forcing you to get to God in order to deal with it, it is helping you to grow. At some point, you don't need that bad and ugly anymore. You need somebody who can really love you for who and what you are, not somebody that's busting your ass 24 hours a day, you know? And you can let it go. Let it go. I have grown past this. I don't need this anymore. It has served me in my life. It has helped me build a ladder between myself and higher energy because it was the only place I could go to get nourishment. And you learn how to get to God that way. But at some point, you don't need it anymore. And you say, no, it's finished. It's finished. I've had to say that a number of times. Finally, it's finished. It's finished. And boy, I'm like a rubber band, man. You can stretch me, a half a mile before snap, you know, for it to be finished. But when it's finished, it is finished. It's finished. So that's how I think is a very good way to approach relationships. Use them to grow. Use them to get to God. Don't have any assumption about how the other person is supposed to treat you. You understand? Just use it to grow, get stronger, build yourself because of what you're going through in that relationship. And eventually that rubber band will break. And you'll say, no, I don't need this anymore. It's finished. And I can tell you from my own experience, I've been through it. And finally the rubber band broke and it was the end, finished, gone, over. No return to this. I don't need this anymore in my life. It is not teaching me anymore how to get to God. It's just dragging me down or trying to drag me down. And I don't need it. And relationships are great for that because, man, everybody brings their baggage to a relationship. You know, these are well-packed suitcases that people bring to relationships. And, they start unpacking the suitcase and it gets scary sometimes, what's in there. But, we have no presupposition. We have no, we can't assume that it's supposed to be this way. And then we discover, no, it's that way. We have to get stronger to deal with no matter which way it works out. And then eventually, if the person is still unpacking garbage, you can say, no, I don't need this. That compost has already worked for me. It's made me grow. I don't need to go through this kind of hell anymore. And walk away. The only people you can't walk away from, your parents and your children. And that I really mean. You can't walk away from your parents. It doesn't matter what they did to you. They were the vehicle you chose to come into the world, and you have to nurture them. You can't walk away from them. Other than that, man, it's a perfect democracy. Like Chris once, oh my God, he's doing well. I said, Chris, God created divorce. What are you complaining about? Get a divorce. I told her that. God created marriage, God created divorce. So why do you have to keep putting yourself through hell? You've had enough.
Thank you. That was very clear.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have a question they'd like to ask? I mean, God didn't create marriage so that we should spend an eternity in hell. Always a door that opens, that there's some freedom. We can, when we don't need it anymore, like anything. People complain about the job they've been doing for 50 years. Oh, I can't stand it. Do something else. Well, I can't. I got and stop complaining. I remember years ago, I used to study acting in New York, and I had a partner I used to work with on scenes from plays. And I got to know her and her husband very well. I used to go by their apartment. They had a place on Riverside Drive in New York, and I would go by there and rehearse scenes with them. And I got to know them very well. And then I left the classes, and maybe 3 years later, 2 years later, I was working as a waiter in a restaurant, in uptown New York, Upper East Side. And I saw him and her sitting at a table. I said, "Oh my God, I hadn't seen them in a couple of years." I walked over, and it turned out it was him with another woman who was the splitting image of his wife. Splitting image. I mean, I said, "Holy shit." I said, well, we got divorced a year ago. And he's sitting there with a woman, literally the splitting image of his wife. I hadn't let go, hadn't let go. Remarried or had another girlfriend, same thing. We're creatures of habit and we have a really hard time letting go. We really have a hard time letting go. Does anyone else have a question they would like to ask? All right. Look, last weekend was really, I mean, I tell you, I don't think I worked that hard in my life because last weekend it was really deep. And I'm thinking seriously, maybe next week to take a week off and just absorb everything. I don't know if I'm going to do it yet, but there's a possibility maybe starting next Monday, I will take a week. I mean, here I have 3 classes, but there's 7 classes in a week that I teach, and it's a lot. So we'll see. I'll see how I feel by the end of the week, and chances are I won't, but there's a possibility I will. Okay, thank you. God bless you all, and I'm looking forward to seeing everyone on Thursday. Have a wonderful few days, and it's a wonderful miracle we can get together. So thank you and bless you all.
Thank you, Stuart. Thank
Thank you.
you.
You're welcome.